Kind of writing down the points that it affects.
Well, we're going to do both.
Okay.
We're going to write the equation because this is a great review to write the equation with given information. And then we're going to graph that circle, and then we are going to determine which coordinates it affects. And actually, we're going to make some adjustments. But anyway, let's get going on this. Could be. All right, so first of all, we want to come up with an equation. So our center is what? Center is -1, 1. So point F is the center. So it's this. Center is -1, 1. And then what's the radius? The radius is 4. And we got that from here. All right, so we're actually not going to write an equation because we're going to write an inequality. Because it can affect, it says up to 4 miles away. So if you're 1 mile away, will you be able to hear it? Yeah. 2, 3, yeah. At 5 miles, will you be able to hear it? No. No, so we're talking about everything that's 4 miles or less than away will be able to hear that. So not a big change in our equation. We're going to still do x minus, but in this case it'll be +1, right? Because the center is -1. And then we'll do our y minus 1. And then rather than just equals, because it says up to 4 miles away. Do you think that includes 4 miles away?
Yeah.
I'm going to say it does. So less than or equal to 4. So, but we do with that, what with that 4? We square it. So we're going to put 16. So we actually have an inequality that represents the area of the circle that this circle covers. Okay, so there's our center at F. We have already determined that's the center. And so from that, we want to go up 4 units, down, left, and right, correct? So 1, 2, 3, that would be at 5, correct? And then 1, 2, 3, -3. 1, 2, 3, 4. So -3, correct? And then I'm going 4 to the right. And then 4 to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have that circle. Oh, Lordy, let's see how well I can draw that. That's not very good. Okay, so my circle is not super great. So we can identify, it looks like a couple of points. What are our points that we think we want to check to see if they are part of it? Colton. D, E, and G. Okay, so human error with drawing, and just because we are not super great at that, what I want you to do is identify the location of those points. What is point D? What's the location of D? And then what's the location of E?
2,
2, 2. And then the location of G. Okay, so if these points are going to be affected, then when we plug those in for X and Y into our inequality, it will stay true. Meaning whatever we get over here will be either less than or equal to 16. So you're going to use this space to plug in these values to see if they are actually part of, are going to be affected by the noise. So remember, first coordinate is X, second coordinate is Y. So we're going to go to this equation. So I'm looking at point D right now. So I'm going to say -4 plus 1. I'm just where the X is, I'm putting a -4. And where the Y is, I'm going to put 3. And I'm trying to see, is that less than or equal to 16? If it is, then D is a point that's being affected. So work that out. I think I get -3 squared would be 9. 2 squared would be 4. 9 plus 4 is 13. 13? Do you get 13, everybody? So 13 is less than or equal to 16. So D is one of the points that's going to, one of the locations that will be affected. So now let's plug in E. Let's find out if E will be affected. That one's, I think it's going to be. G is the one that I wasn't quite sure about. But go ahead, and E is the point 2, 2. So where we see X, we'll plug in 2. Where we see Y, we'll plug in 2, and then we'll evaluate. So 2 plus 1 squared, 2 minus 1 squared. What does that give us? Sorry, I'm running into things here. Is it less than or equal to 16? Three squared is 9. 1 squared is 1. 9 plus 1 is 10. 10 is less than or equal to 16, correct? So E is also going to be affected. So now let's figure out if G will be affected. We're going to use the points 3, 0. So where X is, I'm going to put 3. So 3 plus 1 squared. Where Y is, I'll put 0. 0 minus 1 squared. Is that less than or equal to 16?
No.
No, it's 17, right?
Yeah.
So G is not going to be affected. It's really close. It's like on the 4 point something, but far enough away. So our G is not going to be affected. We would just say, we don't need to include F because that's where, well, maybe we do, because that's where the concert is, right? It is being affected. So our solution would be F, D, and E. Those are the 3 points. Because we're talking about all of this. This is what's being affected. So not just an equation, but an inequality, an area of a circle. This, just make sure it's not, your center, just make sure it's not one of the letters that are already identified here. So our inequality is going to be, we still use the same, whoops, let me move this. There we go. So we can go X minus 1 squared plus Y plus 1 squared equals 9. So we want to, that's, oh, not equals, but is less than or equal to 9. Those are the values we're going to be looking at because we're talking about the area of the circle and everything within it. So from that point that I plotted, I'm going to go up 3 units, right? Up 3, down 3, right 3, left 3. And draw a circle. There we go. That's as good as it gets. And now we're going to look at, it appears that there are 3 points that could be affected here. Yeah, maybe. This one, the G is obviously not. Where's F? You think F's on it?
I don't think E's on it.
I don't think E.
Well, we're just going to try. Let's check. We're going to check G, E, and F. And what are the coordinates for G? G is 3, 0. E is 2, 2. And F is -1, 1. Okay, so we're going to, again, we're going to plug these 3 point X and Y values into our inequality to see if it stays true. If it's true, it's going to be affected. It'll be part of our answer. So we obviously want to state the inequality, so I'm going to want to see that, and then you can show your work to determine. We already thought there was some question about E, and they were correct. It is not. But in G, we thought pretty sure was within that circle, and it is. F was kind of questionable, and we discovered that it was. Okay, so let's move down to number 13. 13 and 14 are very similar, but let's look at the wording on number 13. So we still have where the router, it's a router, and then there's a range that the router reaches, 35 feet. And so we're trying to figure out which computers will be able to connect to the network. Okay? So, is that within the circle or outside the circle? Within. Let's look at number 20. In 20 it says, in which towns are bats from the cave not likely to be observed? So we have a cave at point negative 10, 0, and we have a feeding range of 40 miles. This is different. This isn't what's within. It's which ones outside, correct?
Yes.
So a little different. So we're going to want to choose points where it is. So let's go ahead and skip down to number 20. Let's do that one. So I feel like 13 is just like what we did on the 2 9s, right? Okay, so let's just move on down to number 20. And we have our center at negative 10, 0, and we have a radius of 40 miles. And so each of these is 10 miles. So let's plot our point where our center is. Center is negative 10, 0. That's right there. And then the radius is 40. So 1, 2, 3. There we go. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, should we say a lot?
1600, yeah, because 40 squared would be 1600. Whoa. Okay. All right, so center negative 10, 0 would be written x plus 10 squared plus y squared, and then less than or equal 40 squared would be 1600. Okay, and it wants to know what towns are bats from the cave not likely to be observed. So bats that live in a cave at this point, negative 10, 0, have a feeding range of 40 miles. So which towns will not be affected, basically? It looks like A will not be affected. It looks like D will not be affected. Can we conclude that B, C, F, and G are not going to be part of it? Do you feel pretty confident in that? Okay, if this were a test, I'd probably make sure I check A and D, and probably maybe E. Anything that looks remotely close, I would probably check. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to check the points A, which the location of A is at 30, 30, just to be sure. D is at negative 40, negative 30. And then which one is kind of close? E, we're going to go ahead and show E as well. So check those 3. Negative 20, negative 30. The rest, G will not be on, it doesn't look like. I don't know, G's kind of close. I'm just going to do it because I like math. So 20, 10. We're going to check that.
We want to
do what?
On the inequality one, we want it to be greater.
We would, right? No, well, it could be either. The inside is what's going to be affected, but since it does say we want to know what's not likely going to be observed, yes, let's change this to greater than. Because if it fits, we're looking at the outside points. Thank you, Michael. We're looking at the outside points. Did anybody else recognize that? Okay. We're looking at the outside points, so if it's greater than, then it's going to be one of our answers. They're not likely to be observed. Okay. So, if it fits this, it's part of our answer because it's not going to be affected by the feeding that's going on in here. So, do we get A to work? Go ahead and work those out and let me know which